Welcome back, MTG fans. It's finally time for the sequel to my previous video about price predictions on Mythics. This, of course, is price predictions on rares. It's what I think will happen to all the significant rares in the set. I'm not going to go through every single one, but only the ones that are either worthwhile and I think will go up or down, or ones that aren't worthwhile at the moment that I think will go up. And of course we're going to start with Thought-Knot Seer, the most expensive rare in the set by a long shot. He's a 4/4 for 4, and part of his cost includes colorless, so he's definitely going to have to go in a partially colorless deck. It's definitely a new color, whether they want to say it is or not. So the good thing about him is that you get like a free Thoughtseize. Now the bad thing is that like a turn 4, 5, or 6 Thoughtseize is completely useless the vast majority of the time. But it's a 4 damage creature, 4 toughness, it costs 4. That is actually somewhat uncommon, believe it or not. And then you just get this free effect, so whether it goes off or not, he's still a really good creature. So basically, he's going to go in any deck at all that has colorless as the primary feature, or at least Eldrazi even as the most significant feature in the deck, because he's just the perfect mid-range creature. He doesn't cost 6, he doesn't cost 7, he has, perfect block abilities, perfect attack abilities early, and then you might maybe be able to nuke a card out of their hand. The only problem is if they manage to remove him from the battlefield, they get to draw a card, but simple probability states it's not going to be as good of a card as the one you chose to eliminate, not even close. So the big question is, what's going to happen to that $14 price tag that he's at right now? And of course, like I said in the previous video, my prices are all coming from Card Kingdom. Not exactly the authority on accurate prices, but they do seem to be pretty spot on right now, so I use them. I think there's just no way he's going to stay at $14 because he's just not crucial to any given deck. He's a good creature, he fits perfectly, but he's not crucial. He doesn't interact with anything, he doesn't cause combos, he doesn't have triggers, he doesn't have an ability. So if you decided to build your deck without him, you could just throw in a devoid creature that has maybe even a color mix, and you're just fine. So any creature that's not absolutely the king of the deck or absolutely crucial for a combo just cannot stay at a price like that. So he's definitely going to go down. You definitely want to sell him as soon as possible. And look at this coincidence, the second most expensive rare is the creature that could easily replace Thought-Knot Seer. It's a 5/5 for 5, which is even better, I guess, with Trample and Haste. So you drop it in, boom, it is immediately a problem and immediately a blocking situation where they have to do something about it with that Trample. So you can't just chump block it and say, okay, now I'll deal with it. You have to deal with it right now when it comes out. Plus, whenever it becomes the target of a spell an opponent controls, counter that spell unless its controller discards a card, so you can't even target him. This is a better card than Thought-Knot Seer. He's only sitting at $7 right now, which actually I think is about right, but I would not be surprised if he creeps up. I would be surprised if he creeps down, because this guy, the only thing keeping him out of everybody's deck is the colorless cost. If he was 5 generic mana instead, holy cow, he would fit in every single deck, just like Endless One. Next up, we've got Goblin Dark-Dwellers, which allegedly is sitting at $6. I'd put it at more like $4 to $4.50 from what I've seen, but it's a good card. It started out a little bit lower and went up, and it's selling like you wouldn't believe. The sales numbers are completely insane. Now, it is a 5 cost, which is a pretty big no-no in red, especially if you're doing red burn or red aggro. Well, there you go. It's a 4/4 with Menace. It's aggro. So why would you want something this late game? I mean, it's just a complete bomb in your opening hand. And I guess he would be good in like a red purposeful landfall where you're purposely dropping in lands artificially. But it just doesn't seem like that's what he would be in. So his big thing is that you can cast when you cast him, you can cast a instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard without paying its cost at all. Well, unfortunately, whenever you free cast something, you cannot pay the X part of it, so forget about Crater Claws or anything like that. So I'm not sure what people would be recasting, but I guess it would be just a basic burn spell. And then if, there was some sort of card that said, for example, whenever you cast your second spell on a turn, deal extra damage to the opponent, well, I guess I could see that. But you should have finished them off by then if it's a red burn deck. So, very strange card. I really think it's going to go back down in a hurry. Next up, it looks like we're keeping with the tradition of really expensive take it or leave it Eldrazi. This is another mid-range Eldrazi. He's a 3/2 for 3 with one of those being colorless, which really ruins the creature and limits what decks it could go in, but that's what they were going for, and it actually kind of makes sense logically for, not making the card overpowered and not letting people put it in a black deck that has nothing to do with the Eldrazi, for example. But when he dies, it is mandatory that you reveal the top card of your library, so that's kind of good, kind of not. But you may put the card onto the battlefield if it's a permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less, so that's pretty cool, any permanent at all. Otherwise, put that card into your hand. So you get to draw a card regardless, and then get to free play it onto the battlefield if its converted mana cost is 3 or less. Very, very, very nice. So that alone, you could chump block with him, you could attack and just swing until he dies and then get a bonus card. I mean, he's really the perfect creature. I think he should actually cost a little bit more. The only thing holding him back, like I said, is that he has to be in a colorless deck or a partial colorless deck. So there's not a lot of decks he could fit in, but he is so incredibly important to pacing and control and sort of scrying, but mostly just drawing. So I think his price is going to stay right where it is at $6, maybe go up a little bit. Next up, coming in at also $6, which is also a ridiculously optimistic price, Oath of Nissa. People don't really care that it's a legendary enchantment, and they don't really care that you can spend mana as if it were any color to cast planeswalker spells. They're using this as an instant, or actually a sorcery, not an instant, because you can only cast it on your turn, so there's that. But, hey, remember that card Ponder that's banned in Modern because it's just too darn powerful and lets you do too much? Yeah, here it is in green form. Let me read Ponder for you. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put them back in any order. You may shuffle your library, then draw a card. So you get to look at the top 3, rearrange them, and then draw a card. And then if you really wanted, if all 3 of them suck, you can shuffle your library, which, okay, Oath doesn't do that, but whenever it enters the battlefield, you look at the top 3 cards of your library. Hey, that sounds familiar. And then you may reveal a creature, land, or planeswalker card from among them, and the only reason you're revealing it to your opponent is because, well, basically you have to prove you're not lying. You have to prove you didn't just pull an instant. So, whatever. They know what you pulled, but hey. And then you put it in your hand. So put the rest on the bottom in any order, so you cannot keep them on the top. So it's not a true scry and draw, but it's practically the same card, and it's in standard. I mean, that's why it's so popular. So on literally turn 1, you could go get Nissa with it, which would be great. You could go secure a bonus land, which would be great. It's just a free card draw regardless. And then you could go get a really good creature. Or you could say, oh, I hate all of these, and then I think you could put them all on the bottom. I'm not sure, because it says you may, and then reveal a card, blah, 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 do this, put the rest on the bottom of your card in any, or bottom of your library in any order. But I think the may refers to all of that. I'd have to read the actual ruling. But for now, it seems like an exceptional card. It's another card that you absolutely do not need in your deck. It helps speed up things. It's sort of like a free scry. It helps control your deck so you're not just drawing blind. So it's nice, but it doesn't absolutely have to be in your deck. And this would be one of the cards I would cut if I was at 68 cards, for example. So it's just not that great. And neither are my sales numbers for this card. It's definitely not selling. So I think the price is going to go nowhere but down, unless somebody finds a way to work it into Modern. Next up, we've got the ever-confusing $4 Eldrazi Displacer. This card, personally, from my stock, has been selling like crazy, but the price refuses to go up. So, apparently the demand isn't quite high enough to just kill the supply and send the price through the roof, but it is very, very, very popular. I don't really see why, because white is notoriously not really an Eldrazi color. Very, very, very strange. Now, I had heard that this is going in some sort of white-black Modern deck, and it is sort of making its way into certain standard decks, so that means the price could go absolutely anywhere. The one thing that I think is odd about this is that you'd almost have to be playing, in standard, specifically white and colorless mix, and that's about it. You might be able to get away with another color, but once you add colorless, which pretty much is a new color, you're already looking at 2 different types of lands, so the fact that you have to pay 2 generic and 1 specific colorless to activate the ability is very annoying. Plus it costs 3, which not everybody keeps in their pool, and the effect is complete crap. So it exiles the target creature and then immediately returns it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. So if you were to block with a creature and then exile it and then it's removed from combat, well, then it's removed from combat. So you drop it back in tapped, and it is no longer blocking, but the creature is considered blocked. So during combat resolution, you're actually not taking any damage on that creature. Plus, if somebody tries to hit your I don't know, really important Eldrazi. We'll say Reality Smasher, he's pretty good. Tries to blow him up with a roast spell. I think that's still legal. Well, you could just exile it and then return it. Well, the spell just failed. Ta-da! The target was gone. So it doesn't seem, since it's instantaneous, like that's how it would work, but that's how the rules are. So I guess it just sort of teleports them out of the way for a second, and then they're back. So then you can't attack with the creature after that. I mean, the whole tap thing is a pretty big downfall. So they call this a flicker effect, I believe. And I've never been a fan of flicker effects. I mean, it's just not that great. The only big thing with this card is that the creature technically enters the battlefield again. So if the creature has an enters the battlefield effect, holy cow, could you yo-yo the crap out of this card, that's what I refer to flicker effects as yo-yo, although yo-yo typically means he's returning to your hand, but this is even better because you don't have to cast him. So, you know, let's say you had Ulamog, well, flicker him, ta-da, and then you don't even have to tap him, so if you had 6 mana, you could do it twice. Well, now he entered the battlefield 3 times total. You cast him, then you flickered him, then you flickered him. You just got rid of 6 of their permanents and exiled them, so that alone is pretty good. I mean, you could do it with like a rally creature, I guess, but you'd have to be going like white allies colorless mix, which is such an odd mix. I mean, so this card, I couldn't possibly imagine what'll happen to the price. It's either going to go up or down, I have no idea. Next up, let's cover the big 3, because they're all right next to each other on the price list anyway. Wandering Fumarole, Hissing Quagmire, and Needle Spiders. They're all very unpopular right now, purely based on the fact that nobody plays those color combinations. Now, a lot of people are playing 2-color decks, but there are better color fixtures, like, for example, Fetch Lands, but that is the key. I guarantee you, these are going to go up over time, because when Khans of Tarkir cycles out, which will be actually April 8th, if I'm not mistaken, we're going to lose Fetch Lands. Oops. So if people want to play 2-color or more, what are we left with? We've got the Life Lands, we've got the Pain Lands, we've got the Double Check Lands, which are complete crap, and then we've got the manlands, which can turn into a creature, an emergency jump block, or attack, or finish somebody off. They all have special effects. So they're going to become really popular. It's just I can't get over the fact that nobody plays those colors right now. I mean, they might have to as soon as it cycles, but without fetch lands, you're going to be forced to take the best dual color lands that you can get and just go with those colors based on what lands are available. So I think these are going to go for sure up in price over time. Although Steam Vents and the other one, which is totally skipping my mind right now, from BFZ, those are a lot more convenient, a lot better, a lot heavier in use, and even they fell quite a bit over time. But I expect all 5 of them to go up significantly when the fetch lands fall out. Unless, of course, as we all know, this is the most disruptive thing to land pricing ever, if they put really good multicolor lands in the next set, which will be Shadows over Innistrad. So watch out for that, and don't invest too heavily in the manlands. Now we're getting into the really inexpensive cards, so I'm not going to cover much more of them, but Gate Wreckage is the next one, and I just cannot skip over that one. This is by far, in Standard, the greatest colorless land that you can put in your deck. There are some pretty good ones in BFZ, but this is just amazing. I mean, I can't even conceive of why people are not buying this card and putting it in their deck. Because all you have to do is pay 3, tap it, and draw a card, activate this ability only if you have no cards in hand. Well, guess when you'd really like a card? Probably when you have none in your hand. So I would put this in the place of 4 wastes, absolutely without any hesitation. This is the guaranteed land that should be in every single deck that requires colorless. Now, there are like the pain lands, and they generate colorless, so maybe they'd be better if you're looking for also color fixing. So there might be like better cards for your deck specifically, but this is the best colorless land specifically. So I guess I want it to go up, I just don't know if I expect it to go up, because I don't think anybody's playing a really popular, effective, working, all colorless deck. Now we've got a bunch of cards in the middle that just completely are going nowhere, and I don't think they're ever going to, except for Ailey Eternal Pilgrim. She really is effective, but what's holding her back is that she's perfect in black-white allies, which unfortunately she is not one of. She's a core cleric, not an ally. So I did put her in my allies deck, and I'm not taking her out because she's so super powerful, but that's about all she could really fit in. So, very, very, very nice card, very effective. You could put her in a life gain Felidar Sovereign deck if you really wanted, but I don't think a deck like that would actually win in Standard. So, I don't think she's necessarily going to go anywhere, but she has the most potential. Otherwise, the other like $1.50 to $2 cards is Jorian Rune Diver. Definitely not going anywhere unless it goes in a modern deck, so I wouldn't pick any up. Bearer of Silence, I just don't think it's good enough. Eldrazi Mimic, it's pretty good, but it's not that good. If you already summon a giant Eldrazi, you're probably going to win the game anyway, so you don't really need the Mimic, and it's really, really weak. We got some of the other Oath cards. Those are pretty bad because nobody's going to play a like 4, 5, 6 Planeswalker deck or whatever they're trying to get people to build. And then you've got a lot of the lesser lands like Corrupted Crossroads are just not quite as good. But you do get down to Stoneforge Masterwork and Captain's Claws, the absolute kings of the ally decks. Now, I think the reason that ally-friendly cards and really powerful allies like the Indestructible one, the Hero of Gomafada, why those aren't going up is because people think, oh, it's elves all over again. It was very, very, very obvious in past sets that the creators of the game wanted you to play elves because they made all these nice little elves that went together, and then the deck just sucked. It got crushed by everything else. It was a very good deck that worked very well and very consistently because, well, I think it was also one of the pre-made decks, technically, so you could just tweak that a little bit, and you've got a good, standard-capable deck. But it got stomped by better decks, people who designed them a lot better than just a medium-level deck that the designers intended. So I think people are thinking that about allies. The other thing is that you could play 5 different colors of allies and any mix of them. So that's really messing with people's heads because what are they supposed to do? Which one are they supposed to go with? Should they go with red because of these 2 cards? Or white because of these 3? Or should they mix black because of the 2 color? Or, oh, look at that gold 2 color card. Wow, that's amazing. Do I really want to build my whole deck around those 2 colors though because of it? So there's so many options. The only thing that I find odd is that no matter what you settle on, Captain's Claws and Stoneforge Masterwork, they fit perfectly into any deck because they're all allies. It's as simple as that. So if you want to take one ally and just make it a giant super ally, great. And then unlike auras, you attach the equipment, oh, and then the creature dies because they just became a target. And so they became a target of a kill spell. So move it to the next creature over. You can re-equip it. I mean, they're just the perfect cards. So I do think that if there's 1 or 2 ally decks that become really popular, those cards are going to go up quite a bit. But the sales numbers are so unbelievably low right now that I'm not sure any amount of demand will increase the price significantly. So they could go up, but I don't know if I would invest heavily in them right now. Now, as for the prices on the rest of the rares, I think they're all pretty much where they should be. They're either really specific cards or really weak, or they only go in exactly one deck, or they just aren't designed very well. There's only a couple exceptions. Endbringer really is right up there with like Thought-Knot Seer, Reality Smasher, and Matter Reshaper. I'm not sure why it isn't price-wise. I really think it is quite good of a card. I mean, I might be biased because I kept getting them during the pre-release, and they were absolutely dominating, but I still think a 5/5 for 6 is very mid-price, very effective, it's very good in combat, it automatically untaps, I mean, it basically does everything. It draws a card, but because of all the colorless on the card, you're going to have to be running a colorless deck. So if Arises from the Rubble, a very powerful colorless deck, well, that's going to be in it, but the only problem is, colorless as a cost is a brand new concept, so you're already looking at all the creatures that have colorless. So there's only really a certain number of ways you could build the deck, and they really aren't very good. So I don't think it's going to go anywhere too soon, but it has the potential. Next up, of course, we've got Deceiver of Form. Now this one, I can see why it's really cheap. People have said, well, the effect that it does, the triggered ability, is just insane. Well, not really. It costs 7, one of it's colorless, so you're stuck with that, and then it's an 8/8, so it can sit there and stall and block and maybe even attack. It could win the game by itself, so that's kind of a problem, kind of counterintuitive because you'd want to win using its ability. But at the beginning of combat on your turn, that's important, that it's not during your draw step, reveal the top card of your library. Mandatory. If a creature card is revealed this way, you may have creatures you control other than Deceiver of Form become copies of that creature. And they are literal copies now. The enter the battlefield effects do not go off, but they do become the creatures. So if they have an on-swing effect or haste or whatever, they absorb all of it. They literally become the card. So then you may, if you want, put the card on the bottom of your library. I can't imagine why you would possibly do that. But if you had I don't know, multiple copies of Desolation Twin, Breaker of Armies, something really exceptional that would work. Now, if you put the card there the previous turn with Conduit of Ruin, you already drew it, so that's a problem. So you would have to play Deceiver of Form, wait a turn, have Conduit of Ruin, play Conduit of Ruin, put a really powerful Eldrazi on top of your deck, then go to combat, then win the game. It's so unusual, and then you'd probably put like Ulamog on top of your deck instead and just win the game with him in a couple turns. So it's a very unnecessary card, and costing 7 is just inexcusable. Now you could go fetch this with a whole bunch of the cards that say 7 or greater, plus this triggers a whole bunch of the 7 or greater effects on, you know, lands and whatever else. But it's just not good. It's just not the first card I would reach for, and it's really not even the last card I would reach for, so I think that one will stay right where it is. And finally, we have got the easiest prediction in the history of pricing rares. I guarantee you I am going to be correct about this. I absolutely stake my entire reputation on it. I guarantee you that 39 cents is far too expensive for Hedron Alignment. That has got to go down in price. I'm thinking maybe 25 cents, maybe burning it for fuel. I'm not sure, but somewhere in between those two is probably where the final price will lay, because that card is just never going to happen. I would expect somebody to make like a all Planeswalker, Oath heavy Super Friends deck prior to Hedron Alignment becoming a thing. So, if you have a whole bunch of this card, try to get maybe like 16 of them together and trade it for like, I don't know, 1 Captain's Clause. Or maybe like a cookie or something, or like a drink, maybe some water. I mean, hard to come up with things that are equivalent value, but yeah. But enough about Hedron Alignment. Just kidding, that's not enough about it, because guess what my stamped, dated, pre-release promo was from the very first Midnight release? That's right, Hedron Alignment. My favorite card in the whole world now, so I'll see you guys next video.